All right, I think this capacitor problem in the radio can best be seen by the different sizes of the capacitors. Right there, that's a giveaway. But you know, when I had the radio on its side and the schematics don't list the capacitors, and there's so many things to go wrong. But one of the things is I don't know if you've ever noticed an LED flashlight does some weird things to the colors on resistors. It also does on this radio, the way these capacitors are stamped. When you put the light on it, a 1 microfarad suddenly seems to have a decimal point in front of it. But the whole idea of my videos is when I catch something, or I do something wrong, or I come up with a easier method, I do a video. And this is the perfect video for this radio. As perfect as I'm warning you. Just look at these three capacitors, and they're different sizes. And this one has 3.1s in it. This one has a 2.5s. That 5's a little funky. And this one's 0.5 and a 1 microfarad. So they can have two different values in them. And in the case, the middle lead on this one and this one is neutral or common. But on this one, it's a capacitor. Now, I went back and I looked at the BC314 that I did, and every single capacitor in that radio was bad. And they were all the same. Well, they weren't all the same. There were 0.05s, 3 in each can, and then some 0.1s, 3 in a can. But in other words, those, when you checked them out, each capacitor was leaky. There was no common lead. There were 3 capacitors in each can. See, that's what scared me right away. I don't mind making a mistake on the radio I'm working on, but if I've overlooked something in the past, you know, the radio still worked, but that's what I was afraid of. I went and took the case off the BC314 and they double checked it, and that used 0.05s and 0.1s. Yeah, something like that. Well, anyway, that's what scared me now. So another thing is I noticed that I have 3 BC348s, and I never had one of these caps go bad. Yet the BC314, there's a guy on the internet, on a YouTube channel, he saws them with a Sawzall. For whatever reason he did that. He was going to restuff them or whatever. They were all bad on his, and they were all bad on mine. But it has to do, I guess, with the brand. These were a better capacitor. They seem to all be good, and I'm leaving them where they are. I'm double checking everything, and that's where I'm at. But again, my videos are about when I find something that screwed me over, that made me crazy, I immediately make a video for you so you don't have to go through what I went through. That's basics. Now, what was the other thing I wanted to tell you? There's so much that goes through my head on this, but this radio is, I said it's probably one of the hardest ones. What makes it really hard is the note values on the schematic. It does have a pictorial where the wires go. That would help out if you messed up. But the BC348 overall seems one of the better radios. Now that one there, the BC348, has a lot of bad capacitors. The square ones, the ones that look like stop signs, not stop signs, stoplights, dominoes, those are all bad in the BC348. Now in this one, I think they're called solars. I only had one so far that was slightly leaky. So this radio, the square ones, the little square ones, are mostly good. And so are these. So in one case, remember, I already found a bad tube, which is rare. I mean, that's super rare for a radio that has no hours on it. But the filament seems to be open. That could be the radio was dropped, or it could be a bad connection up in the pins, because it is a metal a metal tube. But I just wanted to tell you, I caught it. I caught it kind of late, and with the flashlight, even with the flashlight, I put the radio on its side. Uh, some of the 1 microfarads, like this one here, one. Am I in the frame? Yeah. When you put the flashlight there and move it around, a decimal point sort of shows up from the shadow of it being punched. And I went back. I said, "What's going on?" I went back on the other side, and I even had to get the eye loop out. I'm not kidding. That's how bad this is. This is an eye loop. I had to get this out to look at that. And what it is when they stamped it, it left a burr sitting up. And then when you hit it with the flashlight, the burr puts a shadow and gives you 0.1 instead of 1 microfarad. I was like, what is going on? And I'm going to tell you, at 72 years old, my eyesight is not, I used to have eagle eyes, close up and far away. And it's not as good as it used to be. And the lighting in this room is not the greatest. It's a regular light bulb. I don't have a work light. Well, I do have this thing here. I don't know if it's in the frame. Back here. This guy. This guy here is the gooseneck LED light. I love how the gooseneck is wearing out. I don't even see it in the frame. The gooseneck is wearing out, and it doesn't always stay where you want it. But it is a good light. But it does that weird thing that LED lights do. It changes the colors of things, and when you're working with a resistor, you think it's bad. You want to be able to read the correct colors, and LED lighting is, it's not. I think it is full spectrum or whatever. Anyway, the resistors look different under it, and so I have to double check. A lot of times, what I'll do after I pick the resistor out of one of my bins, I put the ohm meter on and double check it. But I just want to tell you again, this was a capacitor fiasco, but not as bad as if I had removed these out of the radio. I may have never figured out that there are two different values. I might have put whatever I thought went in there, but if you look at these, you can see they're three different sizes. And this is on the RF side of the radio. RF, the oscillator section. The oscillator's not working, the local oscillator. It's going to be something simple, because most of the capacitors are good in this radio. So, and the other side, the audio section, it turned out to be just a tube. And one capacitor over there was slightly leaky. It probably would have worked. It was a coupling between the preamp and the output. And that, slightly leaky just changes the bias of the tube a little bit. Slightly leaky. Now, if it's really leaky, it can make the tube run hotter, because the leakiness puts more B plus on the grid of the tube, and that causes the tube to run hotter, but it'll still work. That's the funny thing about tubes. You can have a really bad part and the radio still works. But if you notice, and you're in there, the one tube's starting to go cherry red, or you notice it's giving off more heat than it should. And that's because the bias has shifted, so the tube is conducting more than it should, but it still puts out a sine wave. That's why people like tubes. They fight distortion. They really do. Any kind of clipped waveform into a tube gets smoothed out. But if you really like brassy rock music, you don't want a tube amplifier. If you like fuzz, fuzz on the guitar. Some people, I still like, no. I like when I used to be able to hear cymbals. I used to like, in a snare of a drum, that sharpness, that crispness. A tube amplifier, it mellows that out. And some people like that sound. I preferred fuzz, sharp fuzz music, disco, not disco, blondie music and stuff like that. But some people, they like stuff smoothed out. And but anyway, I like music with more energy back in the day. Now my hearing is basically gone, just like my eyesight, and I admit to it. I don't say, well, why don't they make those letters bigger? Why don't they? I was filling out some bills yesterday, and they have all this room on the checks, or on not at the check, the little voucher, or not receipt. Well, anyway, the little piece of paper that tells you how much you owe. They have all this room, and yet they print little tiny numbers on there. It's hilarious stuff. Of course, they basically want you to go auto pay, and I won't do that because if something goes wrong and they pull too much money out, your account shuts down. See, when you're making out your bills, you make sure there's enough money in there. When you have auto pay, things can happen so quick. That's why I don't do a full auto pay. I do have a few bills that are auto pay, but just for convenience. I don't let them have everything because you can get a State Farm. Was my State Farm bill for the house now is $1,400 a year. Yeah, I called them about a fence that fell over. You're not covered. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. It's bouncing around my mind. But anyway, I'll call this a capacitor fiasco. I did catch it. Thank God I didn't take these out because they are still good. And the what I call them, solars capacitors, the square ones, the stop signs, they're all good too in this radio. And this radio it's got to be 80 years old. But there are capacitors in the BC348 that are also good too. So recapping a radio, in some cases, when you start checking the caps and you realize that the first 10 you check are all good, it's most likely you just troubleshoot the radio if you can. But a lot of people just recap the radio and they make mistakes. They put the wrong values in there. And this is what this video is about. It's warning you. This one here is a 0.5 and a 1 microfarad. And this is 2.5s. And this is 3.1s. I think that's it. All right, that's it.